You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup County Councillors Caucus Roundtable with me, Paul Brophy. Unfortunately, my colleague Roisin Clr can't join us this evening, but we're talking with our county councillors, the forgotten powerhouse of the Irish political system. All politics starts at grassroots within our communities. Joining us on episode 3 of the Councillors Caucus here on the Irish Political Roundup, we're delighted to be joined by Councillor Michael Sheehan, who's an independent councillor on Wexford County Council, who has been an elected representative for 26 years, and we can credit you, Michael, for coming up with the title County Councillors Caucus. Also joining us this evening is Councillor John Lahey, who is an independent councillor on Offaly County Council and is the current Cathaoirleach of Offaly County Council, and has been a county councillor since 2009 and is a former leader of Renew Ireland. And joining us for the first time on the Councillors Caucus is Cllr Gerard Sheehan of Aontu, who is a member of Fingal County Council. Gerard is one of 8 councillors Aontu has across the country, and he was first elected in June 2024. Can you all hear me? Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's a busy time with at local county council level, and Cllr Gerard Sheehan, you're joining the Irish Political Roundup County Councillor Caucus for the first time. You're very, very welcome. You've been sitting there. You've been very, very patient, and we do appreciate that. I suppose we've kind of got we've got the rural with Michael and John, and now we have the kind of the urban uh, with yourself. What I suppose it is a busy time for yourselves on Fingal County Council. I suppose there's lots happening.
There is indeed, but I go back to the point that John said, and he said every day is a school day. And I'll tell you, I'm being taught tonight. One of the points you brought up about the decarbonisation down in Offaly, well, we're making up for it up here in Dublin West with our data centres and our computers and our the amount of energy we're using up here sure is half a little city on itself. One of those projects, actually, there was in part talked about as part of the chief executive's report, the reuse of the energy that's burnt and the heat that's being lost from those facilities. So at least they're looking into that, and they've got people looking at ways to be able to use that, renew that. But the other point in relation to the Community Gains Fund, there's another issue up in our area, which will be affecting ye all yet, and it's in relation to drones. So I'm sure you've heard about it already, and Mana is the name of the company, and they're dropping coffee and ice creams and burgers to back gardens all around Dublin 15 for the last year or so. So, it just occurred to me when you were talking there about the Community Gain Fund. And it's like with any of the projects, you can talk about any of the topics, that we'd be addressing. But if there's community buy-in, you need to get some sort of community buy-in to these things. So obviously there is the sponsorship and there's the locals, as you say, the jerseys and all that. But this issue has been contentious for a number of reasons. One is the privacy aspect of it. And, the drones flying over your head, and you mightn't mind it if they're delivering to your garden, but they're looking into your next door neighbour's garden as well. The other issue is the noise. And, you talk about the intrusion of, let's say, a wind turbine beside your football pitch. But if you're hearing like a motorbike flying over your house every day, so that there have been debates about that, and that is an issue that we obviously request. The council can't do much about it, only defer to the government regulations or to the Dublin or the airport authority. But that's one issue. Just when you were talking there, community gains, maybe that's an angle to go at with the drones and to see what they can sell to us. We were talking about the motions as well. I certainly think that the motions that Michael was talking about are well worthwhile. And I'd be certainly looking to be supporting them within my own council in the future. And hopefully we'll be able to talk further on them as well. And just in that, actually, the motion that I had presented this week to the council was in relation to homelessness. But one aspect of it which wasn't addressed in my motion is the animal aspect of it and the pets. You know, pets aren't just for Christmas. But my fellow councillor down in Limerick, Sarah Beasley, had presented a motion recently where she was asking the council to if they held data on the number of houses who or times people were allocated a house but were refused on the basis of their dog. And I know this personally myself, and now not a huge amount of times, but I know of people who have pets and they're looking for accommodation. They've been offered it, but they've been told if it's on the HAP system or whichever, that they won't actually accept animals. So they've had to make the choice as to whether to keep that animal or to get a house. You know, so people are talking, and that's just something that just of interest, just since we're talking about animals and animal cruelty, because I know myself, we've got two little dogs here. I'm surprised you couldn't hear them already, but two barkers, Jack Russell and Jack Russell Collie Cross. But they're family
Best
members
behaviour
now.
tonight.
They are now, in fairness, they've kept them out in the kitchen. But they're family members. And I'd hate to think that, you know, if we, God forbid, you know, had to leave and had to go in to look for accommodation, that we'd have to get rid of that dog. So that's just something that I thought of there in relation to it. And the question I had, as I said, my motion was in relation to housing. Again, the council, I feel, are trying to do their best. I feel in some ways they're restricted in what they can do and that there is only so much money. But we had a presentation the other day and it was giving us all the figures and the number of houses here and the number of houses there. And it looked fantastic. And each one of the developments was brilliant and was welcome. But the issue that I'd have is it's not enough. And, you know, that's only from the phone that I'm on. I'm only the councillor a year, and yet I'd say one of the number one things that I'm requested is for housing. And it seems to be a constant, you know, you're on a list, you know, or all you can do is put them on a list. But just the other point that I was going to make was just in relation to that motion on Monday was our council meeting, and the motion wasn't in fact presented. There wasn't an opportunity for I think it was about 47, 49, 50, 52 motions, I think. And I think maybe they got through a handful of them. But actually, I'm not quite sure on the exact number, sorry now. But I know that I'd say not half of the motions were presented because of the chief executive's report. Now, there were other presentations that were made as well. But it has me wondering about the use of the time in the chamber for those type things. Like they could be separate presentations that, you know, the chief executive could potentially make online and you could watch it another time. Now, it is a good opportunity to ask questions in relation to it if you're given enough time to address it. But anyway, the point I'm making is that we didn't get to address that, and we'd hope for more time. But it's a big learning curve for me. I'm not putting in huge amounts of motions at this time, and hopefully I'll have the experience, the two lads, in the coming years.
And from the motions that you see being put in, Ger, are they kind of are some of them kind of really silly, kind of frivolous things, and when they should be really focusing on kind of more local?
Yeah, well, you know, there is the distinction even within the council between non-statutory and statutory motions. So those non-statutory motions, one which my colleague was presenting, which obviously didn't get at this council meeting, and in fact didn't get at the other one either, they're still worthwhile, you know, in that this one that my colleague, Councillor Ellen Troy, had presented was in relation to the presidential elections and the ability for our northern brethren to be able to vote in the presidential election. So, you know, when we do get the opportunity as councillors, I suppose we have to try and raise these issues by any means we can. And so it was a worthwhile motion, I think. But certainly there would be a number of motions that maybe aren't worthwhile and that feel like a bit of a waste of time. I wouldn't go judging anybody's motion. I'm sure some people might think mine is a bit of a waste of time too.
Yeah, could I just point out just something for, because Gerard just said it there. I had a motion for the county council back in June. I sent a copy of it to you there, Gerard, looking for a change to the Residential Tenancy Act, Section 12 of the Residency Tenancy Act. And this is under Minister James Brown's department. Section 12 allows a landlord to deny somebody a tenancy on the grounds of pets. And the county council would be under the same routine now. Our county council here, like, they have a pretty liberal policy in terms of pets. Obviously, we have the prohibited breeds and that sort of stuff, but the smaller breeds, I think you're allowed up to 2 pets and doesn't deny it. But one of the areas, and this was kind of the law of unintended consequence, in that debate came up about people who are homeless. And we were saying, and in fairness, and it was Jim Codd was leading the charge on this one, and he's an Aontu councillor, he'd be a colleague of yours there, and he was saying that, can the county council step in and take care of the animal while somebody is going through homeless services? Because locally here we have Osman House where men go, and a shelter for women, but they don't allow pets. And because of the vulnerability of the people, 9 times out of 10, the only thing they have in this world that they love is their pet. And so they will not go into homeless services because they'll have to give up the one thing that they love. And we got that motion through. So that's an area that I think councillors can play a profound effect on it, because it really does matter to somebody. Like, and as well as I do, if you have dogs or something like that, and God forbid, if the only thing you had in your life was your dog, that's it. You're not going to go for a house. You're not going to go into homeless services. You'll stay on the side of the street and you take your chances there rather than see the dog go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Animals, they're so important to people, and it's actually, that was a good suggestion that the county council could support people that way with their pets. And I suppose Ger as well. I suppose you're a relatively new councillor. You were elected back in June of 2024. How have you found the last year and a bit?
Well, I'd say if you saw me 6 months ago, you'd say, oh my God. Well, I'll tell you, I was overwhelmed and I was stressed to the nines. And like, you had so many requests coming in, especially in relation to issues like housing. And it feels as if your hands are tied and you can't do a thing. And, you're sending on a letter, and, your people are literally at their wits' end. They're like, I'm going to be kicked out of my house. And you feel, they're looking to you, and you're going, oh, what can I do? And so I did. Now, 6 months ago, I was a little bit overwhelmed, but also with the information that's out there. It's going to take me a longer time than now to figure it all out. Like, even, for example, last Monday, the presentation by the chief executive, there was a good 60, 70, 80-page document that I had to have read in a couple of days before going into the meeting, that I didn't get read. I flicked through it and picked out some of the interesting issues. But I'm certainly not at the stage now where I know it all. I'm certainly not. And in fairness to the council, when I do reach out, they do answer, and they'll direct you as best they can. So they know it as well. And I think, in fairness to them, they're allowing me the baby steps. And, like that, even the mistakes as well. So I'm hoping now within this year, I'll pick up the pace a little bit. But it is certainly a learning curve. The other issue for us locally is antisocial behaviour. And it's, I'm sure it's a phenomenon, not just a big town area. It's everywhere across the country. Yeah. But it's antisocial behaviour is a big one. And what concerns me, or related to that, in my view, is sports and sporting facilities. So we've got a great basketball club up here. It's only about 10 years ago, or well, actually a little bit more. But I'd say there's not one underage team that doesn't have 20, 30 lads waiting to get on it. Now, the GEA team, it's a little bit different. We'll take you as quick as you come. But in certain aspects, like the swimming club, we're lucky enough as well in this locality to have a swimming pool not far from us. And also, again, a little bit further up the way, we've got the most fantastic facility, the National Sports Campus. But in those clubs, there's I think, now I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, or somebody was exaggerating when they told me, but there's something like 2,000 kids waiting to get on to learn how to swim. So, you know, there's that little gap there. So we sometimes say about antisocial behavior, sure, there's loads for them to do. Isn't there the club down the road and this, that, and the other? But there's still clubs. They can't cater for the numbers. And so what I'd be looking at with these community gains funds and everything else, but one thing that I'd be looking at is more outdoor facilities, especially to allow activities during the winter months. You know, the summer's fine. You can be on the pitch and you can do everything else. But when our lads, when the pitch, we're in council used lands, so we can't use the pitches during the winter months. You know, you just destroy them. So we're renting, you know, AstroTurf and everything else here. But even the cost of that, you know, is detrimental to some clubs, you know, that they'd use it more. But it is obviously the number of them that they're not available. But it sort of links one to the other. You know, you'd be talking about one crisis, another crisis, you know, antisocial behavior, sport, homelessness, you know, they're all somewhat linked. And I found that over the last year, I'm starting to see even more so the link between them all.
Yeah, and John, of course, you were a development officer with Offaly GAA. I suppose you'd share a lot of your sentiments there around the importance of having good facilities.
Yeah, Gerard's spot on, and he's targeting the right thing in terms of getting outdoor facilities. And he's touched on something there. Not everybody's into GA either. Not everyone's into soccer. So like, there's various things out there that has to be explored. And particularly, it's amazing, like where like Gerard is talking about drones and whatnot. It seems like alien from what we be dealing with down here in rural. So it's amazing. You think we're all on the same page and we're all have the same issues, but we don't. Like so. Gerard, I don't know. That's a different world altogether when you have drones flying into the yards and whatnot.
It's going to come to you. It's going to come to you.
Yeah. So that's kind of So it must be like it'll all just that's the trend. But just going back to it there in terms of facilities, I suppose it's very, very difficult up where Gerard is to get that. You know, land is such prime, and getting that space, that recreational space, if it hasn't been planned 50 years ago, it's very difficult to get it now. Whereas we're very fortunate down in our area where there's any amount of land. Do you know what I'm saying? And someone is always willing to see the community right and give land. So it's it's amazing listening to the contrast between the urban and the rural. Just, like we have similar issues in terms of housing and maybe like some environmental issues, but when it comes to recreational and how society is changing, it's totally different altogether.
And sure, you're a representative for Ongar. I'm sure it's like a lot of communities in Dublin West. It's growing at a rapid pace, and I suppose it's trying to get the facilities and the infrastructure to keep up with that is the challenge.
Yeah, and this one of the things that sort of prompted me into politics was that, for example, my daughter started in primary school in a porta cabin. And, you know, the school was eventually built and a fine school now. It's a shared facility, great way to go as well. It's shared with the community centre during the night and the evening and the weekends, and the school then during the week. So it's a fantastic facility, a great model for, I think, across the country or for use of halls, etc. But the point was, you know, that's just one example where they knew the population, like they've access to this CSO statistics. We all do. You can see a population growth. Anybody could have told you. And it's the same with the housing. Like you're looking at this, like, you know, there's another 100,000 extra people in Ireland and the growth and population, etc., etc. But in our area as well, we've got a train station, a new train station. This was built, but it was about 3 years before they built the road into it. You know, and it was that sort of lack of planning. You know, that it just sort of irks me. And I can't get it, you know, from, again, you're looking at these statistics or you're looking at something coming down the road, you should be preparing for it. But what I find, or what I seem to see Irish politics is anyway, or the government is, you wait for a crisis and then you deal with it. as opposed to, lads, look down there now, we know there's a problem coming, and let's prepare for that. But what seems to happen in nearly everything, and I think housing is the thing at the moment, but there is a crisis. It's an emergency. And it's still, that now maybe we'll try and do something about it. But in our area, it's very rapidly growing and growing faster. It's going to expand even more now. There's huge developments. There's going to be another mini town anyway, built right beside where I am. And then you've got access to schools. So that's the issues. So you've got, this estate isn't in the catchment area of that school, and there's all sorts of trouble with that. But in saying that, at the very same time, there's a certain amount of forward thinking in it as well. I mean, the infrastructure is there for cycling. The buses need to be developed. There is the Bus Connect service is being developed at the moment. And then there's the active travel is fairly active within Fingal as well. So there are pluses as well. The area is a lovely, welcoming area, very diverse area. All of West Dublin is as well. I'd say in most areas now, it's almost 50-50. And, that's sort of the way it is. So I know that from the churches and each of the churches in the area, there's 4 parishes effectively within this area. You see it from the schools. My kids are still in primary school, secondary school. But it's a growing area, very new, but it has great potential as well.
Absolutely, and Michael, I suppose from listening to John and Gerard there, I suppose you've been in councillor since 1999. There's a lot that you have seen as regards forward planning, how
There is,
do we
Paul,
fare out?
well, like we're kind of mixed between, like in County Wexford, we're mixed. 1 second there, we got some dogs going a bit crazy. There you go.
Yeah.
Apologies for that. At least you know it's live.
Oh, yeah.
We have similar situation, but the problem we have is that any development down, and you'll probably have this too, any development in rural Ireland now is at the mercy of Uisce Éireann. So we have villages, right? We have villages that are going to die and be gone because Irish Water will not give permission for either development built infrastructure or do the infrastructure itself. And, Gerard talks about schools expanding and access to schools. We have schools that are going to be dead in 3 to 5 years because of demographic change. Obviously, the kids are getting older and moving on. And there's no new families coming in to replace them because there's no new housing, because there's no water infrastructure. And the consequence on that will be the local GAA team, the local shop, the local village will absolutely struggle on it. So, we see it in that way. The difficulty I have and the difficulty I see going 5 years, 10 years down the line is when we go into choppy waters and there is no money for all of the different programs at the government. My concern is as a society and as a country that different people are going to start turning on different groups and saying it's all your fault. And my worry is, and particularly in areas of huge diversity and like 50-50 diversity is, that's a huge challenge to try and keep the equilibrium and keep the peace and keep everything going there. My concern is what happens when the money runs dry? You know what I mean? Do people start looking, are we going to have a circular firing squad where everyone's blaming everyone else? And that, sure, look, you're taking our jobs and you're taking our houses, you're taking this and that and the other thing. And, the difficulty you have. The other thing is with the drones, I don't know if anybody saw it, but Sky News had a kind of special report, ran it, I think, all day yesterday about drones in Britain, particularly around the prisons, dropping things off in the middle of the night. And they had a huge expo on that. And while John and I are kind of safe from that at the moment, certainly Dublin, you're not. And it's only a matter of time before it rolls out around the country. And that's going to bring, a lot of changes and it's going to bring a lot of challenges to us. The other side of the coin is, and maybe it's just I'm getting old and cranky, Paul, I don't know, is that do you really need fast food delivered by a drone? Do you really need a cup of coffee delivered? Like, get out, go down, get involved in your community. it's great progress and it's great crack to see it all. It's a novelty there, but really, do we really need to have food delivered by a drone? And like, can we not just get out and get in the car and go into town and keep the towns
Meet
living?
somebody.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, well,
Exactly.
you see, the difficulty is like, and in your area, Jared, it probably doesn't apply, but John certainly would, and certainly applies to Ross. Like, you could go into the main street or the middle of the town at 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, and it used to be absolutely jammed with people, and now maybe four, maybe five people on it, and there's just like an awful silence, like a deafening silence on the main streets of town, because people aren't out on the towns anymore, and they're shopping, their whole consumer patterns are changing, and like, you don't have this in Dublin West yet, but you certainly will. It's like, we are absolutely fighting to do everything we can to keep the town centres open, but people are just, their patterns are changing.
Absolutely, and John, in off in Offaly, I'm sure you experience the same thing. Town centres, coming under pressure.
Oh yeah, massively so. But like, it wasn't Tullamore. I don't like being critical, but they come up with this plan of having these big industrial parks out, retail parks on the outer edge of the town. So you drive out maybe a mile and a half. You have everything that you want. Next thing, what happens is there's a takeaway. There's a sports shop. There's the next thing. There's numerous filling stations. There's Tesco. There's Aldi, Lidl. Next thing, the whole centre of the town is just gone. So we've seen that. Now, I have to say that I have seen massive progress in Offaly with our smaller towns where the footfall had gone, businesses closed down, and I suppose it takes a collaboration with the council and the owners and whatnot, and in order to go down the line of compulsory purchase orders for certain buildings in certain towns and whatnot. But I am starting to see a major footfall starting to come back into most of them towns because the developers are coming in, putting the commercial unit back into a residential unit. There's a bit of life coming back into it. My own town, for example, there was 7 buildings one after the other where there was nobody, absolutely nobody in them. And by the middle of next year, they will all be full. Just sitting down and maybe talking to developers and saying, listen, lads, you can pick up a grant here, or you can do this, that, and the other. Some of them didn't even pick up the grant, but the fact that you put the pieces together and start looking at it from that point of view, we started to see major development. I think, Paul, ultimately the small towns and villages, and I think Michael and Jared would agree, the small towns will never be as vibrant as they were 20, 30 years ago. They'll be just very much trying to get people back living in the buildings that are there, try to get the footfall going. I think people ultimately will go and do their major shops, or their, you know what I'm saying? Like, you take, for example, you might have a small convenience shop in a town. Someone's coming home from work, they're dropping into Tesco, they're getting 10 or 12 items, or they're doing a major shop
True,
because
yeah.
life is so busy, and they're coming back home then and they're getting inside the door. And I absolutely couldn't agree with more, Michael. And I think Michael probably will have emotion on it, is ban drones. Because I tell you one thing, if they're landing around the rural areas, I am telling you, one, there will be pulled out of the sky, because privacy is a big thing in rural Ireland.
Big
People are
time, yeah.
very, you're in Dublin, right? Fair enough. No disrespect to anyone in Dublin, but they're a standard back garden, but maybe a garden shed. When you're in rural Ireland and you have a trailer and you have a plot of turf and you have something over here and a quad, I tell you one thing, I don't think the drones that last too long in the sky.
Exactly. There's huge privacy and GDPR issues as well.
Massive.
Like,
Massive. But Michael's right. Like, do we need to go? Like, really, truly, if we look at it from a society, and Jared touched on it, and Michael said it as well, get out and meet somebody. Like, sure, if we go down this line, sure, when will you ever leave home? We already have remote working, and you can see the way employers are starting to say now, they're seeing productivity is absolutely gone. People's mental health and physical health is gone. They're starting to see now that people are not getting out and moving as much, and it's a
yeah,
big problem at the moment.
yeah. And Jerry wanted to come in there, I think. Yeah,
No,
Gentlemen, just before you do, Jared, I'm gonna have to take my dues. So listen, it's been great to see you, Jared. Best of luck. We're here for you if we can have any help. But
thanks so much.
John, no bothers, and John, we'll be talking to you again. And Paul, sorry, but I have to leg it.
No problem.
Good
Thanks
stuff,
a million.
Michael.
God bless.
Thanks a
Take it
million,
easy.
Michael.
Take care,
Thanks.
lads. Have a good weekend.
Likewise,
You're
Michael.
very welcome.
Thanks. Bye bye.
And I suppose to give you the last word, John, you've 16 years of experience on Offaly County Council. Ger, your
Newbie.
councillor, a newbie. I suppose if there's any bit of advice you could give John to Ger, I suppose, as if he
Yeah, I
kind of
suppose. Yeah,
finds
Jared
his
touched
feet.
on there. Yeah, Jared touched on it off air. He was saying maybe that he just feels that from his perspective, he's sitting back and maybe not saying too much. And we're all being there. And I think the big thing for any newbie that's in the chamber is to sit back, absorb it. Don't feel that you have to say something. It takes 2 or 3 years before you actually understand the process of things. And you think you might know it, but it's changing so often. And even for us as councillors, experienced councillors, it's when you get into the system and you start understand how it operates, and then there's changes. They're minor changes, but to you at the moment they're big changes because you're trying to understand the whole system. And I would say, Jared, just keep doing what you're doing, put your motions in, get your speaking time, get used to speaking in the chamber. It's very daunting. People, even the most experienced people that come into the chamber and they would be good public speakers and very adaptable to what they can do in terms of in the public. But when they come in and with their peers and sitting there and you're trying to talk about policy and changes and get your point across, it's not simple. It does take years. And I think if you identify that it takes years and don't beat yourself up over it, you will learn over time. But people don't realize and don't give politicians enough credit for, and you've talked about the chief executive through 60, 70 page document that you impossible to go through, but you have to try to summarize it and you have to try to take a bit from it and listen in the chamber. But there's a huge amount of learning in Nepal, and people don't give local county councillors the credit for what actually they have to do in terms of adapting to how the system works. And then if they know how the system works, then they know how to deal with the problems. But sometimes what happens is Jared is trying to deal with a problem and trying to understand the system, whereas I'm very, very fortunate in the fact that when someone comes to me with a problem, I nearly know the answer because I know the system.
Yeah,
So be patient, Jared.
Yeah,
like,
good advice.
yeah, exactly. That's some great advice, and you definitely, John, from chatting to you, county councillors, they are a hidden powerhouse within our democracy here in Ireland. Because when something happens, let's say at the high government level, it's the county councillors that have to deal with the impact of it, be it good or bad, on the ground. So I think the roles of county councillor is totally kind of maybe not given the full recognition that it should, and that's what we're here trying to do here on the Irish political round. Well, I'd like to say a big thank you to Councillor John Lahey, who's also a Hirlock of Offaly County Council, to Councillor Michael Sheehan of Wexford County Council, and to County Councillor on Fingal Council, Gerard Sheehan. Thank you very much for taking the time to chat to us here on the Irish Political Roundup. And like I said, thank you to my colleague Roisin Cleric, who unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening. I'd like to say thank you to our viewers for taking the time to sit down and watch us here on the Irish Political Roundup. It's always great to hear your feedback, and it's always brilliant for you to take the time to just check out what's happening on the Irish political scene. So from me, Paul Brophy, have a great evening, and we will talk soon.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Paul.